Today, we're going to explore the mysteries of the Great Serpent Mound, which is this gigantic Paleo-Indian effigy mound that's built in the shape of a snake with its jaws wide open, and there's an egg in its mouth. Now, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, but leave it to be that there is a lot of mysterious things about the Serpent Mound. And we're going to get into a little bit of the archaeology of it. We're going to get into the astronomical correlations that the site presents, and some of the mystery, some of the mysterious things about the Serpent Mound. Stay tuned, viewers. You're going to enjoy this. So, this uncoiling and undulating Serpent Mound sits atop a bluff which overlooks this huge valley. And there's a path along the bottom and a creek. And actually, the valley was the site of this asteroid strike 300 million years ago, which created this giant 9-mile wide crater. And at the southwest corner of this crater is this hill, well, bluff. It's a very steep hill. And on top of this bluff sits this giant serpent-shaped effigy. And you should check this out, because the serpent itself is 1,435 feet long, and it stands between 4 and 6 feet tall. More than that, it presents quite a number of archaeological and astronomical mysteries. So let's get into it. We're going to begin with a sketch of the archaeological characteristics of the site, and we've already mentioned one of them. But the serpent itself is primarily comprised of clay, reinforcing rocks, and ash. And all of these things, maybe except for the ash, would have been easy to gather from the nearby creek bed. But up in the park adjacent to the Serpent Mound are a few burial mounds, and apparently there are at least 2 variations, which suggests to me that more than one people inhabited this area and interred their dead here. In 1991, a team of scientists came out to do some radiocarbon dating of the site, and they decided that the Serpent Mound was built between 500 and 1200 CE of the Common Era. In 2014, another scientific team came out and again did some radiocarbon dating of the site, and this time they decided that the mound was built between 381 to 44 before the Common Era, and that's some 1,000 to 1,500 years earlier than the original estimate. However, there is additional evidence that suggests that the site may be far older than that and far more mysterious. For one thing, there is a scientific process that measures the amount of soil accumulated on top of the site, and that process is called paleogenesis. And a paleogenetic survey was done, and that survey suggested that the Serpent Mound may be more than 5,000 years old. I'm just going to take you through a quick walkabout through the park. And what we have here is a map that, like all the other images, appeared in Randall's 1905 geological survey of the site. It's a sketch map of the park, and what we have is the Serpent Mound right here. Here is the bluff, or the steep fall away, and below it you can see Brush Creek on the left side of the map, just next to that red arrow. Here, of course, within the circle are three of the burial mounds, and these had been excavated. And these were just, kind of what you'd expect from burial mounds. And then here, of course, is the conical burial mound, and it was slightly different variation. And I don't really have many details, except that it did reveal, it was excavated and it did reveal a number of artifacts such as pottery shards and projectile points and, the kinds of things that you might expect. But it also revealed something else, which was a huge surprise, quite mysterious. And I'll get to that in just a minute. All right, I'd like to run you through a couple of the astronomical correlations that are particular to the site. And here we have Holmes' figure of the Serpent Mound as it appeared in Randall's 1905 geological survey. This is what the Serpent Mound looked like at that point. And of course, back then, there was no walking path around it. There was no observation tower either in the back, nor was there an observation platform at the front of the egg like there is today. So if we rotate the picture as such, it will help us to kind of more clearly understand. And from here, I've added a red arrow that points north, as you can see with the compass face there, the compass rose. And it begins at a point at the end of the serpent's tail, which is coiled up 3 times, and it extends due north through the base of the serpent's, I guess that's its head. Anyway, that was due north, and it was meant to correlate to the North Star, but not Polaris. It correlates to a star called Thuban, which is also called Draconis Alpha. And of course, we can find that in the Draconis constellation. And Draconis was the pole star at least 3,000 years ago. So there was one story in which an enterprising astronomer took the image of the Draconis constellation and somehow projected it onto the Serpent Mound site. And what he discovered was that many of the stars in the sky, particularly within the constellation, kind of fell upon the mound itself, except for there was one exception, and that was Draconis Alpha itself. And that star fell sort of at a central point. If we could rotate the Serpent Mound, it would rotate around that central point. And that's the point where the projection of this particular star fell. And from there, if we take this view, and here you have this blue arrow, which begins base of the snake's head and is drawn out through the end of the egg past that little outcropping at the end. And what you have here is a correlation to the summer solstice at sunset. So if you were to stand at the throat of the serpent and follow that blue arrow along at sunset at the summer solstice. And there's another correlation which I want to bring to your attention. If we're looking at the summer solstice at sunset, what would it be like at sunrise? And this is what we get. So each of these 3 curves in the snake correlate. The first one is to the summer solstice at sunrise, because of course that's pointing in a sort of east-northeast direction. And then the second one is sunrise at the equinox, and that's pointing directly east, as we might expect. And then the third is the winter solstice at sunrise, which is pointing a little bit to the south. So just to show you, if we put all of these together, Hopefully it's not too confusing. This is the correlation, the astronomical correlations that we could see in the Serpent Mound. There's one last mystery that I want to share with you. So during our adventure to the Serpent Mound, my friend and I stopped at a shop just down the street, and we met a man who has lived in the area for many, many, many years. And he showed us this photograph of this skeleton, and he told us a little bit about it. This skeleton was exhumed from one of the conical burial mounds. Okay, and furthermore, it was on display at the Park Museum up until 1990. And if you look closely at the skeleton, you might notice that we can see that the left hand, in fact, both hands have been removed, and that the legs below the knees, from the knees down, have been removed, right? Well, this particular skeleton, what we can see here, was 7 feet tall. But if you add, the lower legs from the knees down, then he would have come out to 8.5 feet tall. And this skeleton was on display, as I said, at the Park Museum up until 1990. And this man that we met was able to confirm that he had spent a great deal of time at that museum as a youngster, and he remembers that skeleton clearly. I'm not sure whether I remember it, whether I've been there or not. Nevertheless, that particular part of the exhibit was removed because the presence of a giant skeleton offended the sensibilities of a particular group of people. All right, I think I'm going to leave it here. I think that's enough for now. There's plenty of mystery at the Great Serpent Mound. It's a pretty fascinating place, and frankly, I didn't get into everything, and there's a lot more. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.